So do you guys remember a couple of weeks ago when the media was calling Trump racist because he kept calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus? You guys remember that? And you remember the episode where I said that that's fucking stupid? It's not racist to call the virus after where it came from, considering the fact that that's literally how viruses are named, like MERS, Spanish flu, Ebola virus, right? And I don't recall the, quote, liberal mainstream media calling the Ebola virus racist or labeling the Ebola virus racist when they damn near stigmatized the entire continent of Africa when the Ebola virus was going on. Do you guys remember that? Because I remember that, right? Yeah. So the Chinese government, I think they went on Twitter and some of their officials were, Jesus fucking Christ, you guys hear that? Working from home. Anyway, so the Chinese government went, or I should say government officials of China were on Twitter, on TV, complaining and lambasting the U.S. government and Trump in particular for being racist by calling the virus the Chinese virus, the Wuhan virus. Ridiculous, right? Now, fast forward to this week. I don't know if you guys have seen the news, but just go on Google, type in China, and see what the Chinese are doing. So first, the Chinese government tried to blame the virus on the United States. They claimed that it was a viral, weapon. Just own it. Like SARS came from there. This is just SARS too. Just own it. But they don't want to be stigmatized. They don't want their country to be stigmatized. So they try to say, well, this was an American virus, right? Of course, that didn't catch on because people aren't fucking stupid, right? So then they shifted, and now they are forcibly evicting African people that live in China from their homes and putting up signs saying no black people. Like at McDonald's in China literally posted a sign saying no black people come in, right? That's not racist. So when you're being stigmatized for something that you actually caused, right, that came out of your wet markets because of your cultural practices, that's a problem. You don't like how it feels, but you don't learn that it doesn't feel good to be stigmatized. Instead, you turn and you now pay that negativity and that abuse forward to African people who were just minding their fucking business. There are so many Chinese in the continent of Africa that it's ridiculous, right? They don't mind going to people's countries and buying up everything. And they're doing this across the world. This is real talk, okay? They're doing this across the world. They've done this in Italy. They've done this in the United States. They've done this in New Zealand. They've done it in Canada, so much so that laws are now being put into place to basically restrict the Chinese from coming in and buying up businesses. These are facts. So you can go to other people's countries and take their resources, right? And that's fine. People come to your country and just try to make a living, try to run businesses. And when things aren't going your way, you turn around and you scapegoat them, knowing damn well that this is not something that came from Africa. And we know this because There are barely any cases of the coronavirus in Africa. This is what we're doing. And this is not racist. So you can point your finger at the American government for doing what scientists have done, which is label a virus where it comes from. Like I said, MERS, which means Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, the Spanish flu, because it came from Spain, Ebola, named after a river in the African region where it first started, and the Wuhan virus, or the Chinese virus, because it came from fucking China. We all know it came from China. And when you guys do it, when the Chinese do it, it's not racist? Is this what we're doing now? We're just, okay, all right, okay, yeah. So I wanted to lead with the hypocrisy of all this. And like I've said in previous episodes, and I know you guys are tired of me always saying like I've said, but I'm going to keep saying it as long as the shit that I say keeps happening, because the shit that I say keeps happening. So I'm going to keep saying it. Like I said, this is not a podcast for new listeners. Welcome. This is not a podcast that, I'm not painting myself into a corner and labeling myself as a liberal or as a conservative. I'm independent. I'm a free thinker, if you want to use a label. So when liberals are doing fuck shit, I'm going to call it out. When conservatives are doing fuck shit, I'm going to call it out. And I think that you guys need to develop that same mindset instead of getting butthurt. Not all of you, but if there are some of you who get like wins if I say, you know what, I agree with something Trump said. That wincing reaction, you need to take a step back and reevaluate that, because you're losing your ability to look at things objectively. If you jumped on the calling the Chinese virus bandwagon, saying that that's racist, if you jumped on that bandwagon, slap yourself like twice. It's okay. There've been some bandwagons that I jumped on without thinking, that I stopped and looked back and I was like, okay, that was fucking stupid. The key is to adjust your mindset and evolve from it once you notice that you're doing something that's not right. So slap yourself. And you should be going just as hard, if you are quote unquote liberal, you should be going just as hard against the Chinese government and against the Chinese officials that are now discriminating against black people, as you were when Pelosi was walking through Chinatown saying, oh, it's perfectly fine for you to come. Because you see what they're doing. You see what the Chinese government is doing. Their whole brand of China is being stigmatized, and they know this because, first of all, everybody's got TikTok on the phone. Not everybody, but they know, like, they're spying on people using the data they collect from the quote unquote free app, and amongst other ways in which they used to collect data on Americans and on people across and around the world. So, and the Chinese government is, we know how they are. So they know that their brand is tarnished because of this virus. And so now, instead of owning it, right, first they tried to dump it on the U.S. That didn't work. So now they're trying to scapegoat black people. And you need to understand the deep set implications of that, what that really means. Because honestly, as a person, as a soul that is presently inhabiting an African body, that shit's getting old. That shit's getting real old. This whole thing, like, first of all, fewest cases in the whole entire world is in the continent of Africa of coronavirus. And yet the scientists keep saying, well, let's go and test these vaccines on Africans. I'm sorry, are we lab rats? Did I miss something? That somehow, like, when I decided to come into this planet, I signed up to be a lab rat for people wearing Caucasian and European skins? No. And I don't think that my African brethren did either. Why don't you test your virus vaccines on your own people? And then if it works, then yeah, give it to the people who are in need of it across the world. Don't test your shit on Africans. That's fucked up. Like, that's fucked up. I mean, hello? Seriously? This is what we're doing in 2020 still. Of course. I mean, this has been going on. And here's the thing, too. I got in a conversation with one of my friends. We're talking about religion. And that's really, I'm going to get off of the whole virus thing and then start talking about more interesting topics. So we started talking about religion, and it was like a sidestep. What the initial conversation was that she's a Mexican American, and she has very intense, vivid dreams. Like, they're like a combination of vivid dreams mixed with sleep paralysis, where like she literally cannot control her body when she wakes up. And she told me how she had this dream where she woke up, like you could literally see, like she dreamt that something was choking her, and when she woke up, her boyfriend turned and could see that there were like choke marks around her neck. Now, when you tell an average person, particularly a Christian, something like that, their mind's going to automatically jump to, oh my God, you were being choked out by a demon, blah, 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 right? And so she talked to me about it, and all I calmly said was, well, it sounds to me like you have a lot of psychic energy, and it is manifesting itself in a demonic body, right? And I don't mean it like demonic as an evil, right? Because once you say the word demonic, people, particularly Christians, kind of take a step back. So I started kind of breaking down the root meaning, the etymology of the word demon. So demon came from the Greek word daimon. That's Daimon, or daemon, Daemon. And a daemon was basically another word for your over self or your higher self. Socrates said that his whole life he was guided by his daemon. If you wanted to use a Christian format, you could even call the daemon your guardian angel, but the Greeks kind of looked at it different, as in more that it was you. So it wasn't a separate entity guarding you. It was your own true self, your soul, more or less. And it would steer your lower self, your body, through life. So a simple way to look at it is like, if you want to think of your daemon as, so think of your body as like let's put this world in a video game, right? You can think of your body machine as an avatar, and then you can think of your daemon as the real you controlling the avatar, your avatar body in the simulation, more or less. Like, that's a simple, straightforward way of looking at it. At the time that Christ's teachings were first recorded, early Christians, there was no understanding and there was no mention of the word demon, right? Christ never really preached directly about there even really existing demons. What happened was, as the early Christians started to try to bring together followers and develop a following, what they did was they took the pre-existing religions of the time, the Romans and Greeks or whatever, and they twisted it. And they said, well, Roman gods and Greek gods are evil, right? So that religion is bad. Their gods are false. And our religion, our God, is the one true only God. And so anything that is not of our religion is more or less pagan or demonic. And so through time, A daemon, which had its roots in Greek and Roman theosophy, became more or less it became demonized. So now when you think of demon, you think of horns, red skin, and all this other crazy shit that we have now come to associate with the word demon. It was just a way for early Christians and Christian leaders throughout time to basically say, our group is the in group, and if you don't believe in what we believe, then you are evil, you are wrong, your God is evil, your God is wrong. And so that's a little background on the word daemon. Now, I don't know about all of us, but I would say there's a great majority of human beings that are able to tap into their psychic abilities, right? So whether you call it, ESP, flashes of like deja vu, intuition, prophetic dreams, these are basically lapses in which your lower self, your avatar, connects with your higher self, your daemon, and then the message gets kind of passed directly to your consciousness, or through your consciousness, and then you become aware of something that your body on its own wouldn't have been cognizant of, right? And I think we all have these latent abilities. Like sometimes it's called a sixth sense, right? Where you can feel something bad, about to happen before it happens. You just get a weird feeling. Another very simple example of that is like if somebody's watching you and you don't see them, you feel them watching you, and then you turn and look. That's psychic. That's a psychic ability, right? Now, we live in a society that has somehow convinced most of us that psychic abilities are not real, right? They're only something that exists in fiction. The problem with that belief is that you literally can go online and search. The government actually studies psychic abilities. So they tell you that it's not real, but then they spend billions of dollars funding research and utilizing psychics for like intelligence work and things of that nature. I'm not making this up. As with anything on this podcast, go and Google it. People say, oh, do your research. It's not even fucking research anymore. Like, you don't have to go to the library and, pull out the little cards and then walk to the books, and then just type it into Google or type it into DuckDuckGo, and the information will literally be spoon-fed directly into your palm. And then you just have to stare at it with your eyes and read it. This is like the easiest time in history to learn anything. So the information is out there. There have been scientific research articles and studies done on latent psychic abilities of all human beings, or a lot of human beings, or most human beings, and they're saying that they're there. A very interesting article I read was about a kid that they had tested. This was on the BBC, okay? And this kid was autistic, but he was able to read people's minds. This was an actual thing. This wasn't on the National Enquiry, or what is it, Enquirer? It wasn't a tabloid. This was an actual study that was touted by BBC. So this was mainstream stuff that the general public is being made aware of, but the general public doesn't read shit. So a lot of people aren't even aware of it. This is a thing. Okay? So what I said to her was two things. One, I said, you seem to be carrying a lot of negative energy, a lot of anger. And so that's why a lot of your dreams feel, to me, when you're recounting the story, they feel energetically, if that's a word, yeah, that's a word. They feel energetically heavy. Like they feel like there's a lot of anger. So if you can, in your waking life, work on your anger, right, throughout the day, then that will eventually stop or at least significantly reduce your mind manifesting this sort of quote unquote demonic energy when you're in that weird, world between sleep and wake, right? Strange things happen when you sleep because you're not all the way aware. So there's something that's happening that's like a latent ability that's getting sort of tapped into that you can't necessarily control. So that's why a lot of weird things happen, and people seem to see a lot of weird things when they're really tired or when they're asleep. I can delve deeper into that, but I really don't. I want to stay on topic here. So I said, just work on being non-reactive during the day and, pausing before responding in anger. And you should see that kind of bring down. And then I said, as far as the specifics, why do you keep manifesting demons? Do you believe, are you religious? Are you a Christian? And she said, well, yes. Well, I was raised as a Christian. And my parents, every time she would mention something where she had a feeling or an intuition or a premonition or a predictive dream, like she's always been able to tell when somebody was about to die, because she would have a dream where like her teeth fell out. And every time she had a dream her teeth fell out, somebody in her family would die. And when she would go and tell her mom that, her mom would call her a witch or say that she's being haunted by a demon, or like, to me, it kind of amounts to psychological abuse, but I'm hesitant to use that terminology simply because it's not like her mom is conscious of what she's doing. But I told her about my own personal sort of struggle. So I more or less have kind of had similar situations in my life where I would have recurrent, very frightening dreams, and then when I would wake up, I would still feel the effects of that dream on my physical body. I have woken up like screaming from a dream, but like the scream was like a blood-curdling scream that when I hear it, I could still hear it. And this was a dream that I had maybe like over a decade ago. I'm trying to wait if I should tell you guys it, but it was really scary. It was just, I've had a lot of dreams in my past of being chased by demons. Just one time in college, like it was the same dream over, like not the same dream, the same theme of the dream over and over again, which was I'm being chased by demons. They're trying to kill me. I have died several times in dreams, which they say you're not supposed to be able to do, right? They say if you die in your dreams, you die in real life. I'm a testament to the fact that that's not necessarily true unless I have died in my sleep in parallel universes and then I've shifted and this world is limbo and now that's how I ended up here. So who knows? Maybe every time I do have a dream where I die in my sleep and then I just shift to a parallel multiverse if you believe in quantum immortality. So there's that. Who knows what's really happening? But yeah, recurrent sleep paralysis kind of nightmares. I have had dreams where I've seen apparitions standing next to my bed of people that I didn't personally like, and like half awake, half asleep. It's almost like my mind projected them, in front of me in this reality. And I have, because of like my fearful reaction, I have reacted in a way that has caused things to get like knocked off shelves without me touching them. Like just like waving of my hand. Like for example, I had this dream about this individual that I did not like at the time. And as I was kind of waking up, she was standing right next to my bed. There's no reason why she should have been. It was like 2:00 in the morning when I saw her. She was standing over me, just looking at me. And so I like moved my hand to kind of like get her away. And the act of doing that, it was like you would see in fucking Charmed or something, like the TV show. Like doing that by moving my hand, I knocked a painting over that was a good 3 feet away. There's no way I would have touched it. And then that was what woke me up. And the painting was obviously on the floor. So tons of dreams like that between the screams. And I mean, to the point where, believe it or not, my parents actually took me to an actual witch doctor when I lived in Nigeria, because they were so realistic and they're so real. And my parents had just lost my sister. And I think they were afraid that, something was going to happen to me. So I had that experience. None of that worked. And I tried everything. I was very religious. I was raised in a very religious household. So I always had my Bible within arm's reach. And my mom always told me, read Psalm 91 whenever you have a nightmare. And, take your Bible, put it under your bed. And I even had my ex-husband went and he got me a cross and had it, blessed and prayed for her and putting holy water everywhere. All these sort of gimmicks, for lack of a better word. And none of that worked. And one day, it was logic that saved me. Because one day I was browsing the internet or something like that, and I saw something that said, Jesus is a demon. And that one simple statement kind of threw me back, because I'd never heard something like that before. Like, how can you say that God is a demon? Jesus is a demon? God, as I knew it anyway, to be the demon? What? And so I started doing research, and it took me to the books on Gnostics and Gnosticism. And I started to think like, oh, okay, wow, okay, this is interesting. And I should say I'm not a Gnostic. I'm not. I don't have a religion. I do read a lot on Buddhism and Hinduism, but I think I feel more of an affinity towards those two religions, because if I had to guess, I was probably a Hindu man in a former life, and so I think some of that has kind of stuck in this or came through in this incarnation, and that's a podcast for another day. But anyway, so after like many months of really researching Gnosticism and that whole concept, and starting to see, holy shit, like even Christmas is a pagan holiday, when it's held, December 25th, that's pagan. And then I found out about Ishtar and Easter, and I was like, wait, what? And then I found out about like Thursday being named after Thor, and Friday after Freya, and these are all quote unquote pagan gods. And then I found out that we take Sunday off, but Sunday is Sun Day, and it's a day of worship, and that has its roots in pagan beliefs. And Saturn Day is another day. It's a day of Saturn. Like, so all these little things just started kind of blowing my mind. And Saturn Day and Saturnalia, which is what we call Christmas. And even this year, like a lot of people were texting me, Happy Easter for some reason. But they didn't call it Easter. They called it Happy Resurrection Day. And I just thought it was funny that I think my dad, when I called him, he said Happy Resurrection Day. And I said, why are you calling it Resurrection Day? And he said, well, I don't want to delve into it, but, the word Easter has its origins in pagan rituals. I didn't have the heart to tell him that the day in which he's choosing to celebrate Easter, is a pagan. It's based on the moon, position of the moon. So even though you can remove Easter and call it Resurrection Day, but the day that you're choosing to call it Resurrection Day is still predicated by pagan beliefs. But I didn't say that because I don't want to be that person. So I just said, okay, interesting, and then I left it. But so I just started the more research I did, the more like my eyes began to like open up, and I realized like, fuck, Everything I thought I knew about this world is a fucking lie. And then I had like a super logical thought. So when I would have my nightmares, I would remember, like it was like a part of me would break through and it would be lucid. And I would remember to call. My mom always told me, call upon the name of Jesus. My parents both did, call upon the name of Jesus. And I literally had woken up several nights screaming, Jesus. And it seemed like, yes, a lot of the demons that would chase me would stop at the mention of the name and they would run away. And I thought that was weird. But some of the time they didn't. They just kept chasing me. And I thought, okay, that's weird. At one point, it almost seemed like they were taunting me, like they wanted me to say the name. Now, bear in mind that when I said I did research, I was looking up and reading books, and I went on all these websites and found all these books that read the Torah, but in the original, Hebrew. Okay, that was what I was really doing with my time. It wasn't just basic stuff. I really wanted to find out what was really in this book that I was basing my whole belief in. And so I really delved into the Hebrew understanding of it, and I found rabbis on YouTube and listened to their studies and their lectures on the Old Testament so I could better understand what was being said. And I learned a little Hebrew, believe it or not. Now, through all of this, I had a thought, and my thought was, why would demons respond to the name of Jesus unless he was their commander? It seems like it's super logical at face value, right? Until you think deeper and not accept things at face value. I'll put it like this. If you are a Democrat, right? No, let me flip that. If you are a Trump supporter and you were being physically attacked, right, by a Democrat, right, or by a group of Democrats, right, and you decide, I'm going to call upon the name of the person that I feel is my leader, my protector. And I say, Trump, 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 right? Or you say, Trump, rather, right? Why would Democrats respond favorably to your predicament? Why would they stop attacking you because you called upon the name of your leader or protector, Trump? If anything, if you're being attacked by a bunch of Democrats and you're wearing a MAGA hat, right, yelling out Trump just antagonizes them, right? The only way people beating you up would respond to the name of Trump is if they were on the same team as you, right? If you didn't have on a MAGA hat and you were being jumped by a bunch of Trump supporters, and then you said, wait, I voted for Trump, they would probably pause and go, oh, wait, sorry, and then they would stop attacking you. That's common sense. So, that was what hit me, wait, these entities in my dream, they only let up when I called on this God's name, Jesus. And then I was like, Jesus wasn't even his fucking name. The letter J wasn't even utilized by, it's not in the Hebrew alphabet. His name was Yeshua, not Jesus. So if my name is Joe, right? If I'm standing in a crowd and somebody starts yelling for me, they're trying to get my attention, but they're yelling out Yanua, or Yana, I'm not going to fucking turn around because that's not my fucking name, right? Or they're yelling out, yo, or whatever, right? Joanna is my given name. If you're yelling out Yana or Yana, that's not my name. I'm not going to respond. So why would these entities even respond to a corruption of their enemy's name? That made no sense to me. But in hindsight, I realized that my mind, my daemon, my higher self was trying to show me that, look, Joe, the only reason why these things exist, these entities exist, are because of your belief in this being. That's what made sense to me. Now, some Christians are probably listening to this and getting uncomfortable. And I think that discomfort is a good thing, actually. I'm not trying to say, well, I'll just say what I'm trying to say. I'm not a religious person, but I'm not an atheist. I do believe in if you want to call it the collective consciousness, or I don't believe, because there's no power in belief, right? Like I said this to my friend. I said, what's a stronger mindset? Do you believe that your boyfriend loves you, or do you know that your boyfriend loves you? And she said, I believe. So then, so isn't it better to believe in or to know something, right? What's a stronger mindset to come from or to hold, a belief or knowledge? She said knowledge. So exactly. I don't believe in a higher consciousness, a higher collective consciousness. I know that there is a higher power in which all of us came from and all of us will go back to, a collective consciousness. And I know that we, at any given point in time, do and can tap into that collective. I know this based on my experience and my intuition. I know this. So when I am talking about Christianity and what it has become, it's just me speaking facts and speaking my truth. And you'll understand why as I go forward. So it was all these things, the pausing and realizing, wait, Jesus wasn't even his name. It wouldn't make any sense for demons to even respond to the name, but that was another system of programming. I was told repeatedly that demons will hear his name and respond. And they didn't always, and it was like my mind, my psyche was trying to tell me, hey, you're torturing yourself. You're creating hell for yourself to the point where you can't even sleep. There was a time when literally 30 days straight, every night, as an adult, I would have nightmares back to back to back to back. And I was a good person. I did everything right. And yet I was still tormented. And my mom couldn't do anything about it. She was like, just pray and just read your Bible. One day, after all my research, I realized I needed to do something different. I realized from all the books that I've read that I realized the origins of the word demon. I realized the origins of the word hell. I realized that all of these things were just constructs created by man to control other men. And I picked up my Bible that I've had since I was 15 years old, and I walked it to the trash bin. Now, in hindsight, I don't wish. In hindsight, maybe I should have held on to it, because I had had that Bible for 15 plus years, it's been with me. I always took it everywhere. I got it as a kid, I think it was my 14th or 15th birthday or something like that, maybe 13th, but I've always had it. And I would write little stories in it as far as what I perceived reality was. So just for that historical value. And there is a lot of truth in the Bible if you don't go by what you are programmed to think. And if you take the time to do your research and really understand the truth that's in the Bible, not the mass-produced stuff that most people believe, but what is really being said, which is very esoteric and closer, believe it or not, to Buddhism than a lot of Christians even realize. But I had to walk it to the trash. I had to. And I had to do that because I had to signal to my higher self somehow that this God spell had been broken in me. And it was the scariest thing that I'd ever had to do my whole entire life. I swear to God, I thought I was going to get struck by lightning. Okay, you're listening to an individual who, when I went to Kanye West concert back before he went crazy, I'm joking, Kanye's not crazy, but back when, he put out the Blood on the Leaves album, and there was a song that came out where he said, "I am a God." And when he would sing the part, "I am a God," I wouldn't say it because I thought that was blasphemous. And I actually ended up leaving the concert early because at one point he came out and was dressed like a demon, and he was moving back and forth and his eyes were glowing. And I was just like, I don't like any of this that is happening right now. And this feels very, very like I'm going to go to hell if I stay here. And so I left the concert with my boyfriend at the time. So I was that person. And what a difference, a few years or 5 years, I don't even know, 6, 7 years ago. But what a difference time makes, So that was my mindset. So to be the kind of individual that thought like that, and my father is a pastor, so being raised, in a super Christian home, and I went to Catholic school most of my life, so I also had the Catholic upbringing. So to have all that as my background, and being able to turn and pick up the most sacred thing in my whole life and say, I'm not going to allow this book, because this is not the truth. This is written by man. And know that in my heart and not allow it to have power over me. Because I knew that if whatever that was that created all of this, that created this reality, would not and could not be found in such a book that was so misogynistic and so racist and encouraged slavery and was so brutal, it didn't make any sense. If I wouldn't light my worst enemy on fire for all eternity for not believing in my love for them, and I'm just a basic human being, why would God, the all-knowing, all-powerful entity and creator of all this world, do the same? Am I better than God? No, then clearly what's in the book is not true. So I walked it to the trash and I threw it out. And from that day forward, I have never had a nightmare since then. Never. What I came to find out is I still have bad dreams, but they don't scare me. And typically what happens is while I'm in the midst of having the dream, I become slightly lucid. Not full-on lucid. I become slightly lucid in the sense that my brain goes, oh, something's going on. Because in my waking reality, I've learned that when I get too hot, my body creates nightmares in order to wake me up. So I only have bad dreams, or I guess you could, I don't call them night terrors anymore, because I used to have night terrors and now they're just nightmares, I guess, if you want to argue semantics. So I don't have night terrors anymore. I do have bad dreams or nightmares, but they don't terrify me. They don't scare me. And usually I only have bad dreams when it's hot. And now I wonder if there was a part of my brain that like was trying to communicate. Excuse me, sorry. I was trying to communicate because my brain, there's a part of my brain that knows that thinks hell is hot, right? And the brain communicates in symbols. I mean, we all communicate in symbols. It's, if I say rose, the rose is just a symbol for the flower rose. The word rose is just a symbol for the flower rose. And that's all language is, really. So in my mind, when I would get too hot, my brain would basically tap into, okay, what does she have? What are her word associations with heat? Hell. And then it would pull out things, images having to do with hell. And the terror of it all would be meant to wake me up because I was overheating. Because I have a bad habit of sleeping with like 2 or 3 blankets because I don't like to be cold. I know you guys have heard from on my previous episodes, I usually have a heater going on or something like that. And when I go to sleep, I'm crazy. I got sweatpants, sweater, a wool blanket, and then another blanket over that. I don't like being cold. I'm African. But sometimes I overheat. So I've learned if I don't want to have bad dreams, I can't sleep somewhere that's hot. And that was it. Ever since then, as long as I keep the room, I've never had a nightmare when I was cold. That was it. It was something simple. My brain was trying to communicate to me in its own sort of symbolic way. And it wanted me to wake up because I was overheating. And so it figured, okay, she's hot. I've got to communicate to her, you're overheating so she can wake up. And it turned it into a nightmare. But now that I don't have a belief in demons, it doesn't serve the same effect to startle me out of sleep and wake me up. So my brain doesn't use that association anymore. If I do have a nightmare, it's just more something unpleasant is happening. And then that usually is enough for me to go, I don't want to deal with this. And then I'll wake up. But there's no emotion attached to whatever unpleasantness I'm, visualizing at the time. That's what walking away from a belief and fear helped me do. That's how I beat my quote unquote nightmares. And so what I said to my friend was, you have had, a quarter of a century plus of people programming you to believe in the manifestation of evil in the form of demons. I never actually thought to just tell her, are you overheating? Like, are you hot when you're sleeping? Because that might be what's happening. Because it might just be as simple as her sleeping, with a fan on or something like that. And then her nightmares stop. That was what it was for me. But I said, we all have latent psychic abilities. We all do. Or I should say most of us. I can't speak for everybody. But for sure, most of us have some latent psychic ability. But we are told by the same people who are paying millions of dollars to conduct research on individuals that do have these abilities. We're told that we don't have these abilities. And you almost have to ask yourself, why? Like, you almost have to ask yourself, does somebody not want, why would they tell you that these abilities aren't real? Knowing that they believe it's real, right? If I can convince you that you are weak without me, or that I am strong, or both, I can control you. So it always stems back to control. So now, the second part of her conversation with me. I said, you've got to kind of pause and ask yourself why you think that anything that is not Christian and does not align itself with Christian theology is evil. And she said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, okay, well, let's see. So, like I said, she is a Mexican American. She has a strong sense of intuition, deep understanding of herbology and plants, and gives good counsel, and also has the ability to manifest like force and energy, right? So I said to her, why do you believe that all these things all these abilities that you possess are evil? And she said, well, because my mom says they're evil because they're not, because she's Christian and because of the things that I was exhibiting. I said, okay. I said, if you were alive in Mexico 500 years ago, and you had the same abilities as you have now, you would be considered a medicine man if he had incarnated as a man, or a medicine woman. Okay? Now, especially in Native American and cultures, there are medicine man and spiritual. I want to use the word guru because I can't recall what the word for like a Native American spirit guide or teacher would be, but they are out there. The guy who wrote the Four Agreements kind of falls into that category. These are spiritual teachers, right? So amongst your own people who aren't practicing Christians, what you're able to do, see the future, predict people's deaths, intuit certain things, tell when people are lying, that sort of thing. They wouldn't consider those abilities. Shaman. Thank you. I just had something whisper in me, you're thinking shaman. So she would have been, if she would have incarnated as a male, she would have been, or he would have been considered a shaman, right? Or a medicine woman, right? But her abilities, unless she used that ability or those abilities to harm people, she would not be considered evil. In fact, in a lot of different cultures, if you're shown to be able to manifest these abilities, in a lot of indigenous cultures, you are then either sent on a spirit guide or you are sent to practice with other spiritual leaders and teachers, and then you are taught things that they know in order to make you a better practitioner of your craft, right, of your spirituality, right? But now you have adapted for yourself the Jewish religion that is called Christianity, but you're not a Jew. Are you a Jew? And she was like, no, I'm not Jewish. I said, okay, but Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, these all three are Abrahamic religions, and they all have their root in Judaism, right? And these are tribes that came out of Africa and the Middle East, neither of which you're from. So why do you even believe in another culture's God? And she said, I never really actually thought about it like that. I said, okay, let's go back to the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament repeatedly says, I am your God. You shall have no other gods before me. I am the one true God. I am the only God. So you shall worship no other gods. He says this shit a lot in the Old Testament. Go and read it. If you're the only God, then why do you have to worry about other gods? And why do you have to tell people not to worship other gods, right? Like if I knew I was the only artist in the world, I wouldn't have to tell people I am the only artist in the world and you shall have no other artists before me, right? Like it would just kind of go without saying. So killing a bunch of your followers because they worshipped Baal, which is another god, a quote unquote pagan and therefore evil god. And by the way, pagan just means not Christian, or not, the formal, except not believers or people who don't believe in the formal definition of Christianity. That's it. So basically non-Christians. Anything that's not Christian is a pagan. And it didn't start out as being a stigmatized word or carrying such a negative connotation as it does now. But I said, let's look at it as facts. Okay, you're Mexican, you're Mexican American. Your ancestors 500 years ago, before the Europeans even came to this country, had their own beliefs and their own gods and their own religion. And then Europeans came, bringing with them their Jewish religion, and then they gave it to your ancestors and somehow convinced your ancestors that their God was a false God. And as a result, you lost your ancestors, gave you a book, and your ancestors lost their land. And they did this across the world. I remember we went to Hawaii last year. We were on the Big Island, and we were learning about the Hawaiian gods. And I was like, we were driving around in the Big Island, and like every other mile you would see a Christian church or a Mormon church, a Christian church or a Mormon church. And I was like, why? Like, why would you give up a cool-ass volcano goddess like Pele for some emaciated white guy on a cross? Like, Pele was a badass. Like, that is so cool. And then, of course, what happened as the Europeans came in, when they convinced the islanders to give up their gods, they lost their power. Now, you could argue, like, okay, maybe their gods are real. And when they stopped believing in their God stopped protecting them. I don't believe that God's like, in the sense that we understand God, it's not consciousness as in our collective consciousness, which is just a collective of all our souls together and the source of where all consciousness flows, which is how I perceive our, if you want to use the word God, I don't like the word God, but being, or whatever you want to call it. But the things that people worship, these are non-corporeal entities that I've always believed, or always thought, that were created by human psychic energy. And the Greeks and Romans believed it too. And there's several movies and TV shows that even kind of say the same thing. I think American Gods is one of them that says, when a god is only as powerful as the amount of human beings that believe in them, because that god sort of is fed by or is manifested by the psychic energy of a human being. So gods didn't create human beings. Human being created gods, and they created gods in their image, which is why the Greek gods, the Norse gods, the Yoruba gods, the Edo gods, the Igbo gods, all pretty much act human because they're human creations, right? I'm an artist. I'm a Black female, and all my artwork, for the most part, are created in my image. They don't all look like me, but they all have dark skin and ethnic features because the body that I'm presently inhabiting has dark skin and is a female and has dark features. So people have said, are you painting yourself? It's like, no, I mean, maybe I'm painting various incarnations of my past selves, but not necessarily as if this is my tribe, and so that's what I'm doing. Artists create things in their image. So I think that you can get a group of human beings together, and if it's a large enough collective of those human beings, you can manifest a non-corporeal entity and give that thing power to protect you. And I think that that's what Wiccans believe and all these other quote-unquote pagan religions believe. And when people stop believing in that cultural, maybe you can call a god a sort of a guardian daemon, right? So when people of that culture stop believing in that protective deity or that protective daemon, then they stop having that psychic protection over them, and then they become susceptible to the psychological and psychic influences of the culture, and represented by the god or whatever that they gave up their religion for. You should loop that a couple of times until that sinks in. Try to avoid repeating myself. But this is a practice that I've seen. If I believe that an entity protects my home, I can manifest just from the power of my belief, because that's how strong the human psyche is. I can manifest that being and have it protect my home. These are facts. I've seen it. I've done it. Consciously and unconsciously. Okay, now in the case of religion, that is an unconscious manifestation of a non-corporeal entity, and then that entity is called a god, and then worship is such. But that act of worship is how that being is sustained. So if you give up your belief, then you kill your own God. And it was that entity, that collective, that was more or less protecting you and your people. Which is why a lot of the cultures that we see that were dominated by the Europeans first gave up their gods. I told my friend, I don't think that you should pick up the mantle of your ancestors' religion. I think that you should understand the latent powers of your own mind. I think that's the more important thing. The religious practices and the spiritual practices are more distractions than anything else. You have abilities. We as a collective, human beings have an ability, even with this whole virus thing. If we all decided that we want to move past this, that enough is enough, we will move past this. Collectively. All is mind. So what I said to her was this. A white man came to your ancestors and said, your God is evil, my God is good. Put down your God and worship my God. And your ancestors did that. How is that not white supremacy? If I painted Oshun right now, a bunch of Christians would attack me and say I'm worshiping a demon. Why is my goddess, if I believed in Oshun, I don't, for obvious reasons, what I just stated. These are manifestations of psychic abilities. But let's just say I was a practitioner of that religion. Why is my black goddess evil, but your white God good? Fuck you. Like, that's fucking racism. You're saying that something who created me, theoretically, in its image, is evil. But what you're saying to me, low-key, is then that if I'm created in the image of these gods, which all religions believe, and that God that I worship is evil, then you're saying that I'm evil. And if you're saying that your God is good, and thus superior to my God, then you're saying that I'm evil, and I'm inferior to you. And that's exactly what we see playing out everywhere. And people don't realize that to bow your head to a white god or an Asian god or a Hindu god is to, on a certain level, unconsciously, unless I don't bow to any gods, but if you're worshiping something that doesn't look like you and you're bowing to it, you are admitting that that thing has sovereignty over you, be it God or king. And you are admitting that you are inferior to that thing, be it God or king. I bow my head to no one. I kneel down to nothing. And I certainly am not going to continue to propagate the supremacy, the white supremacy that has plagued all people of color on this continent and this world by doing so. I said, I have never seen a Chinese man bow to a black god. Anything black is called a demon. And as a result, we see how our people, how African people are treated. When you've socialized people to see darkness as evil, well, then you're going to see dark people as fucking evil too. If you want me to bow my head to your white Jesus or to your Chinese God or to your Hindu God, you bow to my black God. If that makes you feel some type of way, if I paint a painting of Madonna with an afro or braids, holding a black Jesus and a halo over her head, and that makes you feel uncomfortable when I bow to her and I kneel to her, you're fucking racist. Like, that's it. And you're not even conscious of the fact that you're racist, because in your mind, why wouldn't I bow to your God? And why wouldn't I accept that my black God, that my ancestors developed over their course of their culture's history, is just as equal to yours? So I said that to my friend, my Mexican friend. I said, you keep thinking that your own abilities are evil because your mom is putting on you the fact that Christians have told you that anything that's not Christian is evil. Anything that's not European is evil. Anything that's not of white culture is evil. And so you're suffering. You have abilities. Don't manifest demons out of that. Create what you want, not what you don't want, based on positive energy, not fear and anger. Me painting ISIS and giving her a third eye has been met with people saying, that's a demon. Okay, well, Jesus is a demon.